we're out with him all night. He's drinking, he's partying, he's with the guys. He's playing a doubleheader the next day. You know, I had a relationship with Pete, no relationship like where I didn't have his phone number or anything, but it goes back to Atlantic City, actually. 25, 30 years ago in Atlantic City, Caesars, is when the first time I met him in the race book. He was kind of standoffish. A lot of people were trying to talk to him. He's trying to handicap horses and bet horses, you know. And then I seen him at Mandalay Bay here. He was a little more friendly to people, and I was in the Black Bear Diner on Tropicana and Jones, I think that's where it's at. And sitting down, and buddies of mine have said, "That's Pete Rose right there next to us." I said, "Oh wow, that's really, really cool." He had a Cincinnati Red hat on. He had a white hat on.
White Reds hat.
A white Reds hat on with a C with him, but it's in white. And I waited for him because I know the Showtime show that we did. I brought on a friend of his, Cookie Jar, who was a lounge entertainer in town here for decades and decades. Great guy. He's still around. He retired, but he's still around. And I know him and Cookie, Pete and Cookie were friends. So as Pete gets up, I said, "Pete," I said, "my buddy Cookie Jar is also your buddy." He goes, "Oh, Cookie, I love him. How's he doing?" He said, "Get him on the phone." So I call him on the phone. I hand Pete my phone. And he's talking to Cookie Jar on the phone. And meanwhile, Pete's son and his grandson, another kid, they left the diner. It's just me and Pete Rose and my friends from Myrtle Beach. And we started talking for so long. And sure enough, Pete leaves. And he was asking me some questions about Cookie and stuff because Cookie Jar told him on the phone, "Crack's a great sports bettor." So now Pete has a little something in common.
Insta friends.
Yeah. So now and that was really it. It took photos with all my guys. Very nice about it. Leaves. I sit back down. He leaves his red phone on the table underneath the bill with the money. He paid the bill. And how did we notice? I have no idea. My friend noticed it. And he said, "Pete left his phone." I said, "You're kidding me." So I said, "I'm going to go grab the phone and, hold it because I don't. Sure enough, the phone comes on. The phone just comes on.
Yeah.
Here's a picture of Pete and his dad when he was little, like literally 10 years old, get a catch from Pete. I should have took a picture. How can I not? But I felt kind of like intrusive. I don't want to take. But of course,
that's understandable that you did.
My friend grabs his phone and is like, "Well, we got to call the last number he dialed. There's no lock on the phone."
Couldn't you just have called Cookie Jar to call Pete?
I guess I could have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking.
Mr. Jar. You could have called him.
Yeah.
What do you have that listed under? Cookie or Jar?
COOKEJARR.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
The Cookie. So he goes to dial the last number. Bob Costas.
That's the last one.
You better not dial Bob. Go to the 702 number before that one.
You should have dialed Bob.
No, so they go to the 702 number because you want to know someone that has Pete's son's phone number. You know what I mean? So he dials the number and sure enough he goes, "Oh, I'm going to call Pete's son and I'll get him." And they were so thankful and grateful they got the phone back.
Oh, I'm sure.
No lock on the phone.
As anybody would be.
No lock on the phone. Nothing there.
Yeah.
And then, of course my buddy was like, "Man, look at some of the numbers he called before this." And I was like, Dave, that's not right.
Dave,
Don't do that.
Stop doing that, Dave.
Yeah, I told him not to do it. But I mean, there was some names in there. I'll tell you off air. You'd be like, "Get out of here,"
You should have called Costas.
Costas was the last one.
Because Costas would have just said something. Baseball is a romance and football is a one-night stand.
Yeah.
He would have just launched into
I've been with Costas already though. Costas and Teddy Atlas. So I've been with them. So anyway, come back and get their phone. They're so happy. They're really happy they got the phone back. There's no lock on it,
Wow. So
his son came in. No big deal. And sure enough, I don't realize it at the time now that Pete's living, a mile away from the diner. I knew he was living in Vegas, but didn't realize that was his spot. I go there maybe once a week. Sure enough, about 3 weeks later, I go in by myself. I feel like they have the greatest oatmeal and they make their own sausage.
Where is this?
Black Bear Diner. So shout out to them. They make their own homemade sausage. I just felt like getting some oatmeal and sausage. Go in the morning. Who's sitting there at the same exact booth? I go in and said, "Pete, same booth, huh?" Just him and his grandson this time. What do you think he says? He goes, "Who are you with?" It's just me. Sit down.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Because now he wants to know some of the stories because of Cookie Jar. He's very smart now. So sure enough, he goes, order. So I order my food, and I'm sitting there eating with Pete Rose. And you want to know something? Until he passed away, probably didn't realize who I was eating with. I probably didn't know.
Really?
He's just. I know he's great. I know he's a great on the field. Just a hair before me, Gill. I remember on the Phillies.
Me too. Same thing.
I don't really remember the big red machine so much.
We were a little too young to appreciate that.
That's the right words. Yeah. I don't realize how great he was. I watched some of the clips now, and when he got his hit that he passed Ty Cobb, his mom was in the stands. Mark Schott runs out of there, and I didn't realize. And then emotionally,
his son embraced him.
His son embraced him. He put his hat down. He was tearing up a little bit. It's very stoic, hard internally, Pete Rose. I'm not trying to give. Put Pete Rose on a plaque here, by the way. I'm not trying to say he was the greatest internal guy. I know some things about him, gambling-wise. But he did bet on baseball, and that was illegal and was wrong, even though he bet on his own team. Yeah. And I just think for his accomplishments on the field, he should have been in the Hall of Fame. I put the tweet up with the picture the other day after he died, and I had to block some people. Some people came after me and came after him.
People are, if we were doing straight sports talk radio, right? If we were doing that, all we would have to do is say at the top, anybody, right? Would have to say at the top of the show, Pete Rose should, let's say you said, Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Your phones would be lit up for hours.
Right.
Because people have serious opinions about this kind of thing.
I bet you're right. I used to do the Fan in New York, WFAN, and whenever that, they were always surprised, the host of the show, how the phone lines lit up. They love talking about sports betting, gambling, so to have someone in there to talk about that. And, I was pretty surprised. The day the guy dies, 24 hours or the same day, and people went after him. I was just surprised. Now, listen, you can go after him, but why don't you wait a little bit? Like, did you have to have an opinion with, under anonymity? But let me just tell you, sitting down with Pete that day, I think I came in here and told you this. I did not realize that he actually said something to me, and I think I came in here and talked about it a little bit. He actually did want to be in the Hall of Fame.
Of course he did.
Yeah, something I never heard him publicly say or anything. But saying to me,
he desperately
he's like, they're not going to put me in while I'm alive. That's what he told me. So now that he died, it just hit me more.
But, I made this point when I was doing my thing on it the other day. I sort of tossed it in at the end, which is, posthumously, after his death, they're going to put him in some way.
Right.
And I have to tell you, that almost feels worse. Right? Like, in some strange way, it's like, oh, you purposely waited to put him in.
Right.
Because you wanted to inflict as much pain on this human being. I said my piece.
Listen,
I'm not going to repeat it. But
I don't watch First Take. I don't watch Stephen. I don't watch ESPN, to be honest with you. But I do like Mad Dog Russo. Yeah. And Chris Russo, he's on there. And him and Stephen A. did a First Take show that was so good. I recommend anyone go to YouTube and just put Stephen A. Smith, Pete Rose in. It was so good. Stephen A. went after baseball. He went after gambling companies.
He's right.
He went after... he said a pox on your houses. You better never make a mistake. You take his glove, his cleats, his uniform. You take everything. Let these hypocrites erase 23 years knowing that they profited off them. The networks profit them off them. Murders have been let off easier. Talking about forgiveness. What he did, wasn't a good look for baseball, but it shouldn't erase everything that this guy did. And they used Rose in marketing deals multiple times. I personally talked to Pete about something. We'll come back from break, and I'll tell you one more thing I talked to him about when him going to Cincinnati for something.
Yeah, I made the point that O.J. is still in the NFL Hall of Fame.
There you go. There you go.
Care to share any of those gambling stories from Pete?
Oh, when we come back, I'll tell you one.
Okay. Yeah. I'd love to hear those. I'm sure everybody would. I want to hear the Pete Rose gambling story.
So now, Fox, I do a show on the weekends on Fox Sports Radio, 7 to 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Been doing it for years. So they send us on remotes to different places around the country for football games, which, to be blunt, for me, for my co-host, I guess it's great. They got away for their kids and they're away for the weekend. And for me, I'd rather be in Vegas on the weekends. It actually hurts me leaving on a Saturday, coming back on Monday. I'd rather just be here. So they sent us to Cincinnati 2 seasons ago. Is it Great America Ballpark? Is that the name of the park?
Yeah, Great America Ballpark.
And it was cool going to the stadium. And there's a statue of Pete Rose right outside the stadium sliding.
Charlie Hustle. Head first slide.
Head first slide. A lot of roses there now, and there's a lot of flowers there now that Pete passed. But thinking about what we were doing there, going in to the ballpark where the sports book was. So the sports book is in the ballpark that we're broadcasting right out from right field, and that's where the ballpark is. Excuse me, that's where the sports book is. There's a sports book in the ballpark overlooking the stadium. I know there's a couple sports books now across the country, but that might have been one of the first ones ever. And now I'm told Pete Rose was just paid to come out here and make the first bet. And I'm just thinking to myself, Jesus, how hypocritical is baseball, the sports books are, just not really the sports books, but how hypocritical is the guys are keeping him out of the Hall of Fame, but he's allowed to come in here and make a bet inside the ballpark, where they want people to come in and bet in the ballpark as they're watching the game. Let's face it. It kind of bothered me. So I remembered that when I was having breakfast with Pete. By the way, I had to fight Pete Rose for a check. So I just wasn't going to let him pay. Anyway, so I had to mention that about Pete because it's hard for me to believe that he was, to make the first bet, he was getting paid to fly across the country first class. Sure enough, yeah, they paid. Pete got paid a lot of money for things.
Oh, he did.
And like the day before he died, he was with his guys in Tennessee, I believe it was. Ric Flair put a whole thing out. He goes, Pete, I was with you yesterday. It's devastating to me. He wrote a nice tweet. And all the Dave Concepcion, Tony Perez, George Foster, on and on and on, all together, like the big red machine that...
Johnny Bench even says we were friends, despite what that documentary portrayed.
I seen the Johnny Bench tweet.
Yeah.
Not a Johnny Bench fan.
Yeah.
Johnny Bench was very cold to a lot of the fans I know. Let me tell you something. A lot of the players back then, Mike Schmidt, totally cold to people. Who was the real good pitcher that? Steve Carlton.
Steve Carlton was notoriously
very cold. I'll give you someone else. That's a jerk.
Steve Carlton never talked to the press, I don't think, either. Yeah.
Yeah. Mark McGwire. Nasty to people. Nasty. Just nasty. So, anyway, but...
I was hoping for a better Pete Rose gambling story.
But there's a couple things that I'll tell you off air, too, that don't deserve to be shared, to be honest with you, with anyone. There's just a couple little things he told me I'm going to keep to myself. That nothing bad, nothing illegal or anything. It just... let me
segue to something else.
Yeah. I do have one last thing to say about.
Please, go ahead. Say the last thing.
So the first take, Mad Dog Russo comes on. Chris Russo, love Chris Russo, and after Stephen A, and he just goes crazy too about how Pete should be in the Hall. He says if you think about some of the Hall of Fame members, you have steroid guys that were cheating, you have racists who didn't want to play with Jackie Robinson, but yet you're keeping Pete Rose out.
It's so hypocritical, it drives me nuts.
No, it was just...
then when you have the people who inevitably, when you say something that I thought I was, as measured as I could be, and you still have people like, nah, he did this and did it. Because no one's saying he wasn't his worst enemy.
Correct.
No one's saying that.
Correct.
But there is something called tempering justice with mercy. And it's like we've all lost sight of it. Like 35 years of his life, they denied this man the one thing he wanted. And it's just so cruel.
I'll give you a real quick Pete Rose story about how good he was.
Yeah.
So some guys I know in Houston were out with him all night. He's drinking, he's partying, he's with the guys. He's playing a doubleheader the next day. Now, all they are, because they're sick degens, they're just going to bet against him keep him out as late as they can because he's playing a doubleheader the next day. Well, don't worry. He went 7 for 12 in both games, including the game-winning hit in the first game in the 9th inning. So it's just that's how good Pete Rose was, and that was in Houston. They're going to know who I'm talking about there.
Thanks for watching, but don't let the betting insights end here. If you want an extra edge this football season, you can get a month of VSiN Pro right now absolutely free. That means access to our betting insights, analysis, and tools like our betting splits at zero cost to you. Click the link in the description to sign up.